one overall pick, we have Orlando on the clock, and that is going to be one Jeremy Woo making the number one overall pick. There's a lot of pressure here, Jeremy. A lot of pressure on this decision.
Oh, yeah, no, this is an easy one for me. I'm taking Jabari Smith. Not going to think about this too hard. For me, he's been the guy, since December when I went to see him. I didn't know as much about him coming into the season. I really got familiar with him, and I spent some time at Auburn, and I'm really convinced that he's the guy. To me, he's in a tier of his own ahead of the other three guys at the top. I think his shooting is just such a special skill. It's going to be really hard to block. I think we're overthinking the whole dribbling aspect of it, just because it's going to be easy for him to get it off. And I think a creative coach will find ways for it to work. And, knowing what we know about him as a defender and as a person and how much he cares and how much of a perfectionist he is and how hard he works, like if I'm Orlando, I just think he's the guy who I want to sort of like set the culture, and I'm willing to like grow with Jabari as my guy. So he's my pick at number one.
So I want to know from any of you guys, is there anyone that would not take Jabari number one? Sam, I know that you are in the camp of Chet and Jabari are kind of on that same tier. Who are you going with number one overall?
Well, it's interesting, and this is something I wanted to pose to Ryan, because I think that you guys had a situation a couple years ago with Luka Doncic versus DeAndre Ayton. How much do you care about fit when considering the number one overall pick? Or you just take the best guy, the guy that's number one on your board, or you just, at the end of the day, you have to consider, hey, we have Devin Booker already, and do we need another ball handler in here? Is there a better fit with a center maybe that can fit with us, right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that factors in more, Sam, on the team side than from what I've seen on mock drafts. You need obviously a balanced, competitive team, offense, defense, rebounding, passing, all those kind of things. So part of our thought process, right or wrong, and keep in mind there was some discrepancy, right? I got fired in preseason, and Igor Koshkov got fired after 1 year. Yeah. But part of our thought process was the balance, with Devin Booker in the backcourt, DeAndre Ayton in the front court, rebounding, defensive potential. Obviously, he wasn't a great defender at U of A, certainly improved in that area. And then, just the physical anchor on the interior. And then after we got Ayton, getting Bridges on the wing in that same draft to put in between them, we thought that was obviously criticized. Luka's been phenomenal. Those three guys and the Suns have done pretty well collectively. So that's why one of the things why it's so hard for a team. You're not drafting, in a vacuum, or it's easy to go. I think sometimes go back and nitpick and say, well, it should have been this guy. You need to bake all of that in and figure out when you hand the ball to the coach in training camp and say, look, play these guys, figure out how to play them together. How is it all going to work, and how are the guys going to complement each other?
Right. And I think at the end of the day, that's why I was I think I would, at the end of the day, if I was Orlando, probably consider Jabari Smith over Chet, despite the fact that I might have Chet at number one on my board.
So there it is. Jabari Smith, number one overall pick, which means we're going to the number two pick, which is Jeff Goodman drafting for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I have no idea where this one's going to go. We have our confirmed loose cannon making the number two overall pick.
Yeah, I'm not going Shaedon Sharpe, so you don't have to worry about that. Even though I'm really concerned. And I do have a little bit of a love affair with Shaedon Sharpe, the mystery man of this year's draft. But listen, Sam Presti's got a tough decision on his hands here. He really does. I mean, they need a lot. We know that. They've got about, 104 picks over the next 6 drafts, first-round picks. He's stockpiled them, kind of like Danny Ainge did a few years ago, and eventually he'll probably start moving them. But listen, on this pick, it's Chet or Paolo, and you couldn't look at two different players in scenarios, right? I mean, Paolo is the ultimate. You kind of know what you're going to get. He's going to come in and make an impact right away, and I think he's going to impact winning right away. Big, strong, athletic, fairly tough. And you got Chet, who, if you're a GM, you're scared as hell to pick because of looking at his body, but you're even more scared not to pick, because if you miss on a guy that's going to be a franchise player and a unicorn of sorts, and he could stay healthy and add 30 pounds, you could be looking at a dude that is like Porzingis-like in the offensive end and a hell of a lot better than Porzingis in the defensive end. He could be a dominant defender if he puts on 30 pounds. So I think here, if I'm Sam Presti and I'm Oklahoma City and I'm a small market, I roll the dice. And I take a swing on Chet Holmgren rather than going with Paolo, who I think will be an all-star. But again, with Chet, yeah, I mean, listen, you might get a guy who's out of the league in a few years because he can't put on and sustain the weight and physicality of the league. Or you may get a guy who's an NBA star.
So just so everyone that's watching this knows, we told our panel to have a pick made in 30 to 45 seconds. Goodman just rolled 2.5 minutes making the pick for Chet Holmgren. Matt, we got about 30 seconds. What's your take? Is that the right decision or the wrong decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable take. I mean, that's what everybody's projecting is going to actually happen. I do think it's a tough decision, and it's a good problem to have if you're Oklahoma City and you're Sam Presti, because I think between Chet, Paolo, and Jaden Ivey, all three are exceptional talents with a lot of upside, just all very different. It's sort of a pick your poison type of deal. Me personally, I really like Jaden Ivey. I think his upside is through the roof. Just his athleticism and burst makes him potentially special. But again, I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong decision here.
All right, so we are now moving on to the number 3 pick in this draft, which is going to be the Houston Rockets. That pick is going to be made by Sam Vecini. And Sam, I think I know where you're going to go with this pick.
Yeah, I just want to note that I was the one that was worried coming into this about being long-winded in my answers. And then we have Goodman roll for 2.5 minutes. Look, this is an easy one for me. It's Paolo Banchero at number 3. Houston just needs talent at the end of the day. I don't love the fit of Alperen Şengün and Paolo Banchero in the front court, but I'm not convinced we've seen enough from Alperen Şengün on the defensive end to know for sure that he can be the kind of guy that can play in a playoff series quite yet. So at the end of the day, I'm taking the guy that I think is the best fit with Jalen Green, because that 2-man game, I think, between Jalen Green and Paolo Banchero has a chance to be genuinely special. Paolo Banchero's passing ability, I think, is maybe the most underrated skill that any player has in this class. Being able to run these inverted actions, 4-1, 1-4 ball screens with Jalen Green is going to be really, really special in my opinion. And I just am such an enormous fan of the mismatch nightmares that he's going to create on the offensive end for the Houston Rockets. So it's easy. It's Paolo Banchero at number 3 for the Houston Rockets.
Ryan, how do you feel about that?
It seemed like that's exactly what Houston's thinking. I'm seeing some of the reporting from Jonathan Givony and others last night. They made the deal yesterday with the Dallas Mavericks to bring in Christian Wood. Send out Christian Wood, freeing up some space in the front court, getting a pick later in the 20s, and then a bunch of expiring contracts, some or all of which they'll probably waive. They did it, I think, to move Wood out and to get a later pick. So for me, it knows they know they have their guy. And at 3, they know they're going to get one of these guys, right? If the order's jumbled in the top 2, if Holmgren or Smith slides, it seems like they're comfortable taking them. But I imagine the draft's going to go exactly the way the actual draft next week is going to go exactly the way that our first 3 picks have gone.
That's because we have the best experts covering the draft here. So it's probably going to be exactly the way that we roll this out. You got about 30 seconds here, Jeremy. I want to know, how do you think that fit between Jalen Green and Paolo Banchero is going to work? Are there enough shots to go around between those two?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think one of the sort of underrated things about Paolo, who I have at number 2 on my own board, is he can play both ends of the 2-man game, right? Like he can be the screener and he can be dangerous, or he can bring the ball up. Like they did that a little bit at Duke with Mark Williams screening for him. So like, I think with Jalen as a player, as talented as he is, I think you get 2 guys like that and you try to get them to build chemistry. And I think it can work. Like they're both, unselfish enough. And particularly Paolo, like as Sam said, he's a really, really good passer, which sometimes gets lost in the whole dialogue about him. So I don't see why it can't work. You have to figure out what to put around them. But those 2 guys together, I wouldn't have any concerns about.